People gonna stand soon after they fall. People gonna hear the call. People see the day through the dark of the night. People gonna make it right. People gonna make it right.
Welcome to episode 3 of, Reaction Monday here at the Oasis of Reality. This is Election Recon. And again, I'm your host, Josh Whitfield. I'm sorry that we missed Monday. This is actually going to be coming out on Tuesday, but as our loyal dozens and dozens of fans know, I'm in a fight, a wee little scrap, as you would say, with the big C, with cancer. Not life-threatening, but treatment is taking its toll. And so I wasn't able to go yesterday. You guys voted. Third time is a charm for Red Eagle Politics, a long-time favorite channel here at the Election Recon team. Of course, our resident Democrat prefers Let's Talk Elections, and our resident right-wing nut job, Jeff, prefers Red Eagle Politics. So we've already done Let's Talk Elections in episode 1. We did Big Data Poll, the People's Pundit, host of What Are the Odds, Rich Barris, last week. That was full of comments from folks out there in the interwebs world. And this week, episode 3, finally Red Eagle Politics holds on to the lead. There's a little late jump there for Night Talk. But Red Eagle Politics, here we go. We're going to be taking a look at this video came out, I believe, yesterday. That's correct, October 10th. Jeff picked this one. It is Senate Battleground Analysis, Why Republicans Appear to Be in Good Shape in the Big Four Races. Looking at this map to start here, it appears to me that the Big Four is Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona. And I would agree with that right out of the gate. There's not a whole lot here I disagree with. Washington, Colorado being likely seems fair. New Hampshire, lean. I agree with that. So, so far so good here, in my opinion, out of the 49 for the Reaps, 47 for the Dems. We should say that it is possible for polling misses to really change here. Remember, everyone thought Susan Collins was going down in Maine in 2020. She ended up winning by a significant margin. New Hampshire is a weird state like Maine where it's easy to miss some undertones in the data. And, so keep New Hampshire at a grain of salt, though I suspect that it will go to the Democrats. The state of Georgia, lots of news there. Pennsylvania, you have Fetterman, who is a horrific candidate, going against Oz, who also isn't the best candidate, but is way better than Fetterman on the fundamentals. Arizona, good night. Blake Masters crushed Mark Kelly in the debate. He crushed him. I don't care what your partisan lean is. In Arizona, Blake Masters wiped the floor with Mark Kelly. Not good for him. Question is how many people have already made up their minds and how many people actually give a damn about the debate. And in Nevada, Laxalt, great candidate, and that's going to be a real battleground as well against a solid progressive to establishment Democrat and Cortez Masto. So, I agree with him so far. So let's go ahead and break down his video now.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we are currently less than a month away from the 2022 midterms. The fight to take back the House and the Senate is on for the Republicans, and there's going to be a lot of governorships that are going to be hotly contested as well. It's definitely going to be.
I want to just take a moment and congratulate Red Eagle Politics. It's here in my notes from Jeff that our EP just reached 150,000 subscribers. You can see that down here. That's a milestone. For us, it seems so far away. But I know REP's been at it for a long time. So congratulations. Shout out to REP on 150K.
a very historic midterm year. It is going to be a night for the ages. And in this video, I wanted to kind of build on what we talked about in the Senate prediction video, talking about these contested Senate races, what I like to call the Big Four, the four that are going to be the most competitive races in 2022. Wanted to touch base on them, talk about them a little bit more in depth in this video, explain who is really favored at this point to take each one of these races. Keep in mind, Republicans need 51 Senate seats to take back the Senate. Democrats need 50 because Kamala Harris does break the ties because she is the current VP. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out at the end of the day, although it is very, very likely that Republicans do retake the Senate at this point. And a lot of people might disagree in the election mafia, and we're going to talk about that in this video. But I'm going to explain why they're probably going to be favored in all four of these. But first, I have to tell you guys about our very good friends over at the Veteran Challenge Coin. I'm going to go in depth in this video on each one of these states, because this is where the power in the Senate is going to be decided on. This is where it all comes down to, these four states. And the election mafia, 538, Nate Silver, as I like to call him, Nate
Again, minus an upset that we're missing. But generally speaking, it does look like control of the Senate's coming down to these four. I agree with his analysis.
Plastic. He now has Republicans at 33% in terms of their chances of retaking the Senate. Now, keep in mind, that is up significantly from a few weeks ago. They were down there close to 20%, if not even a little bit below that. But as we sit here on October 10th, they have raised the chances to 33%. We know it's much higher. Even Predict It knows it's much higher. Predict It has Republicans at roughly around 50-50 with...
I'm not big, as most of you guys know, I'm not big on the betting markets as a predictor for elections. I'm really not. You know, I think it's very subjective data. But that being said, I agree with REP. I'm not one of these guys that's just going to sit here and beat the hell out of Nate Silver, but it's pretty confusing as I sit in this hotel room on the campaign trail right now. It's pretty confusing, the 538 model this year, and you could already kind of feel kind of the coping mechanisms beginning from the mainstream media. Some of the stories that are getting put out, like, you know, Nevada, you know, shifting away from Georgia being the key, Fetterman is collapsing. So all these narratives that the mainstream media was driving 5, 6, 7 weeks ago are no longer there. And it looks like a very real possibility that Republicans really only need 2 of these 4 states to win, right? So our model seems to think that there's a slight chance. I mean, it's practically a toss-up in our model, but a slight edge to the Republican Party here. But that being said, 538's model is very skewed. I don't. It's just rough, and I think 538's on its way to another rough night on November 8th.
The Dems. If I was going to place a bet on who was going to hold the Senate after the midterms, I would personally place the bet on the Republicans. But this is very true, and it's so laughable. I mean, I'm tired of the gaslighting because it's worse now than ever. I mean, I don't know how somebody could be so wrong time and time again, over and over again, and still find a way to make excuses just so they could keep the viewers engaged. It's laughable, but that's exactly what Nate Silver does. He was wrong in 2016. He was wrong about a decent amount in 2018. He was vastly wrong in 2020, and he's probably going to be even more wrong than before in 2022. You know, sometimes you make a mistake, you adjust your methodology, you move on. He's doubling down.
I could not agree more with REP here. Again, I think statistics is soft, hard math. I don't, that's probably a terrible explanation, but like when he's saying that Republicans have a 33% chance to win the Senate, what he really means is 1 in 3 times the Republicans in his simulations are winning control of the Senate. Now, obviously, we don't agree with that here. Clearly, REP doesn't agree with that assessment, but you know, it is a slight advantage, even though it seems not, like, you know, 2 and 3 times. So, and you can stretch data and statistics to kind of meet whatever you need. But it really and this is where I think 538 goes wrong, is they really they prefer what I call the echo chamber polls. I feel the only way I feel like they can get to the conclusions that they get to on all three of their model types is they give extra credit points, buku, to the polls that tend to lean Democratic, and then they penalize polls that tend to lean Republican, and they don't treat them fairly. Unlike what we do here at Election Recon, it's simply based off your accuracy. Did you call the state right? How far away from the margin was your projection from the final result, and how far away from the actual vote share was your projection from the final vote share? It's not very complicated how we rate the polls. So,
in fact, he's making it worse. He's unskewing the polls in favor of the Democrats in many places. It's hilarious. But we look at Pennsylvania even, and they have Dr. Oz at 28%. He has a 28% chance of winning in Pennsylvania. Yet you look at Ohio. He gives Tim Ryan a better chance than he gives Oz. He gives Mandela Barnes a better chance than he gives Oz.
Crazy.
He gives Sherry Beasley, who's probably going to lose by like 6 or 7 points, a better chance than he gives Oz.
Crazy.
And Masters, by the way.
here.
He has Masters down there at 19, which we'll talk a little bit about each of these races. But still, RCP's a little bit better because at least they're taking the polling error into account with their projections. This is true.
And they've been taking a beating from the liberal election Twitter this week over this. But that's not how we do our projections. But I like what they're doing here. They're taking the historical trend for polling average errors and plugging them in, because there has been a consistent bias in one direction over the last 4 to 5 cycles. And so 4 to 5 cycles of consistent bias towards one party over the other in polling, I think, is objective enough data where you can do something like this. So I'm very interested to see how this works out for RCP. And if it does work out this year for RCP, doing the adjusted, the underestimated polling error and then applying it to their projections, we may take a look at this for election recon moving forward. RCP often creates new things that become trendsetters forever. And like the aggregate polling average, they were the originals to do that. So my point is this is interesting to me. I'm very interested to see how it works out for them. But RCP has taken a beating over doing this, and I just don't understand why, because it seems to be fairly common sense at this point.
You look at how the polls are underestimating them 29 days out of Election Day, and you look at the adjusted polling average, and this takes the past 3 cycles into account, and it would show that Dr. Oz would be leading by a couple of points, which is probably what I anticipate. I think that is about right. You look at this map right here. You look at where...
We should caveat this, too, is it is probable that there's a polling error in Pennsylvania. It doesn't mean it's a guarantee. It's probable that there's mass polling errors across the country right now. I believe that to be the case, but it's not a guarantee that that's the case. And so people take that with a grain of salt. That is subjective from all of us who are saying that. We can't prove it. All we can prove is in the last 3, 4, 5 election cycles, there's been a tremendous polling error in favor of the left. And basically we assume at this point that polling error is going to continue, because we haven't seen any fixes from the mainstream media or the mainstream polling industry.
The election is decided. Oz is doing very well in a lot of polling in Philadelphia. A lot of people are saying he's going to get over 20% there. If he does so, and he gets over 20 in Philadelphia, makes modest improvements in some of the counties surrounding Philadelphia, it is game over. Oz did very well in the primary in a lot of the Philadelphia suburbs. He did very well in Bucks County. I think he's probably going to win it, and at that point you're looking at the math. And the math for John Fetterman is not exactly there, especially if Oz is doing better in Philadelphia. He's doing better in Pittsburgh. You look at the fact that Fetterman bottomed out in Philadelphia in the primary. He did very poorly, especially in a lot of the black precincts. You're looking at turnout potentially dipping in a place like Philadelphia. It's not looking good for him. And
I will say this. I think if Oz wins Bucks County is going to be a real indicator. Oz doesn't have to win Bucks County to win the state, but if Oz does win Bucks County, it would require Fetterman to really run it up in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and I agree with REP. It looks tough for him to do that there. The question, the weakness for Oz is in the middle of the state. It's in the hills. It's in the rural part of the state. Can he get Trump level turnout? And that remains to be seen for me. Really close one way or the other, which is really sad because Fetterman, whether you love the guy or you hate the guy, cognitively, just like we've seen the president of the United States, like this guy Fetterman, should he really be in the United States Senate? Is he really capable of doing the job? That's for the Pennsylvania voters to decide, but I'll leave it at that.
Talk about the polls in the primary. The polls underestimated Western Pennsylvania significantly. They had David McCormick getting in the mid-teens. He almost beat Oz. He got roughly a third of the vote because he did well in Western Pennsylvania. Now, McCormick is a total grifter. We know this. He was grifting as always America First now when he was talking about impeaching Trump a little bit more than a year prior. But still, that's beside the point. The bottom line is that the polls have consistently underestimated Western Pennsylvania, and a lot of the polls have Oz winning among independent voters, which means he's probably doing well in a place like Chester. He's winning independents in nearly every single poll. And the undecided voters are mainly Republicans who are skeptical of his past record, many of whom have already come home. And you look at the polls in Pennsylvania right now, Fetterman is only up by 3.7. This is a race that is within the margin of error, and that is without a Susquehanna poll in there. That is without a Trafalgar poll in there, polls that, you know, historically have been fairly more accurate in Pennsylvania than a lot of the mainstream media election mafia polls. But even in those polls, Fetterman holds a 3.7% lead. And you're also looking at the fact that there has not been a poll released in the state of Pennsylvania over the past 10 days. Technically, the Suffolk poll came out about a week ago, but still that polling sample was from late September. It is very possible that we will see a poll come out in the next week or two that has Dr. Oz in the lead. And one look at Fetterman's campaign and one look at the way that Fetterman speaks every time he opens his mouth, he's very incoherent. That's not going to vibe well with a lot of voters. It's really not, coupled with his record, especially on crime. Oz has been getting on the airwaves. Now, a lot of...
Make no mistake about it, folks. Crime is starting to rival inflation now as the number one issue nationally in voters' minds. Crime is really making a strong push in the fundamentals. Inflation, I think, and the economy is going to remain number one. But basically, the Democrats are now losing the top two issues, coast to coast, border to border. Okay, so crime and inflation are the top two concerns of the electorate, and the Republicans are up in the voters' minds on who can better handle those issues, and that's a real problem for the Democrats heading into this election.
People are reporting seeing more Oz commercials than Fetterman commercials. Fetterman's talking about New Jersey. Oz is talking about crime. Fetterman is somebody who advocated for releasing about a third of all prisoners in the state of Pennsylvania, especially at a time when crime is rising out of control. So definitely Dr. Oz has the upper hand when it comes to a wide variety of the issues. The only thing Fetterman can talk about is New Jersey hit Oz for fake scandals like the whole puppy thing nobody cares about, and he could sit up there and maybe talk about some like positions that Oz has on issues that Oz has never even expressed, trying to paint him as like some hardline right-winger, which is pretty funny. If Oz was nearly as based as they say he is, he probably would be winning. He probably would be doing a lot better in Western Pennsylvania in the polls, which is the ironic thing about it. But that's really beside the point for Pennsylvania. I think that Pennsylvania is a state where Republicans are going to win, possibly at the end of the day by a couple of points in the state. It's possible Oz could even run up the score as we get closer to Election Day. If you see that polling error in Western Pennsylvania that we saw in the primaries, and that polling error is getting worse and worse and worse. And people might say, well, polling errors for the primaries don't usually carry over to the general, but they do. In fact, you could point to Michigan in 2016, Hillary's underperformance in Wisconsin in 2016, Trump's overperformance in Pennsylvania in 2016 compared to the polls, and you could see where the polling errors were. So they definitely matter. because it shows the quality of polling in that given state. They may not be as drastic because there's a lot of late deciders and primaries compared to general elections, but still the errors are there, and every single poll consistently underestimated Western Pennsylvania, which is a very pivotal place, and that place is filled with voters in the general election who are going to vote for Dr. Oz and Doug Mastriano. So keep that in mind, but it's looking pretty good for Republicans in
I agree with them that those regions of Pennsylvania will go red, but how much of the vote will they make up? That's the real question in my mind. And I'm not sure, even with a polling error in the primary, I haven't seen anything definitive yet that leads me to believe that Dr. Oz has consolidated the Republican Party in Pennsylvania behind him, i.e. that blue-collar Trump voter that he will need to show up if Pennsylvania is going to go red. We haven't seen it yet. I'm not buying that yet, but we're close to pulling the lever on purchasing that talking point, that narrative. So, and just to be objective here in the analysis, we don't know yet. That's really the big question mark. If rural Pennsylvania turns out in strong numbers, and there's big turnout in Pennsylvania, especially in the rural and the western parts of the state, Oz is probably going to the U.S. Senate. If those turnout numbers are more modest, like we've seen in many battlegrounds in the primary across the country, Fetterman probably sneaks in depending on how well Oz can do in the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia suburbs.
Pennsylvania, and you could see why RCP has moved this one into the projection column for a Republican hold. So now we're going to go down to Georgia, which they actually have it as a Democrat hold in RCP because Warnock does lead the polling average by 4, and there really hasn't been a massive polling error in the state of Georgia in recent history, and if there has been, it's usually been in the other direction for some reason. But you look at the polls that are in the mix here, you have Survey USA. Survey USA is an illegitimate pollster. You look at Survey USA throughout history, we've seen polls that have just had one candidate up by 15 and then they lose, or the other. Doesn't exactly matter which party they're polling. They've been off the wall time and time again and have been...
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with him here. They're not illegitimate pollster, but they are a pollster with a spotty record. So I would put Survey USA like this. Survey USA is like that mediocre photographer who still charges you professional rates, and what they do to cover their inadequacies is they're like me when my wife asks me to take pictures. I take 2,000 pictures and hope 20 come out great, and that's how I kind of feel about Survey USA. They do a tremendous amount of polling every year, and only a handful of their polls come out great, right? Most of their polls are terrible. So I agree with REP that they're not great, but I wouldn't call them illegitimate. I think that's too harsh and not fair.
Fairly inaccurate. And you see this with a lot of polls in this mix. Fox News is arguably the same way. And contrary to popular belief, Fox News is not a right-leaning pollster.
It is not.
So you have this scandal that dropped.
We do, just like REP said, right? We analyze raw bias, and Fox News in it's one of the reasons it's not even, that, and they're often wrong. Are not in our top 10 polls, but Fox News has about a 1.6% Democrat raw bias. That's not great.
Where Herschel Walker's son turns on Herschel Walker over a current scandal, which has already been mainstream for months now. It was mainstream before he even ran. And people are acting like this is the end of the Herschel Walker campaign.
It could be.
Because of this. And it's like, no, there are skeletons in his closet, you could say, or there are scandals that are being thrown his way. Some may be, more grounded in reality than others. But a lot of the same scandals also apply to Raphael Warnock.
True.
We call him wife-beater Warnock for a reason over here. And beyond that point, it doesn't really seem as if this is going to impact Herschel Walker too much. The only people that were going to vote against Herschel Walker...
We've seen a couple of private polls now out of Georgia statewide, and we've seen enough that we're convinced here at Election Recon that the scandal has hurt him. That being said, it'll be really interesting to see if turnout overall is just suppressed, because now in retaliation, the story was dropped, the counter October surprise on Warnock, who clearly dropped this whole baby mama abortion thing. They've had it in their pocket for a long time. This is just campaign tactics. Sorry about that, folks. There's apparently a party going on in the pool deck outside of this hotel here. I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, so if you hear that background noise, I apologize. I'm at a hotel doing campaign stuff. So, but my point is it'd be really interesting because now, like I said, Warnock's had this in his pocket for a very long time. They dropped it, October surprise. In many ways, a signal of kind of a desperate move that Warnock knew he's in trouble, so he tried to create this big bombshell of something that they've had in their pocket for a very long time. And then we got the story today that Senator Warnock, whose church pays him some $7,000 a month for some housing stipend, and they're evicting people for like $30-$40 back rent. Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. I'm going to go as far as saying I don't think either one of these guys are great human beings. We learned a lot about Warnock in the 2020 race. It's a shame that he was running against a very weak incumbent. This guy is both these guys just have so much baggage. I wonder how much undervoting there'll be. I wonder how much depression in the overall turnout there's going to be in Georgia. It's going to be very interesting. I disagree, obviously, with Survey USA. The fact that they released a 12-point difference here in the polling is laughable. But I do think this one's going to be very close. Currently, right now, we're projecting the race to go into a runoff here at Election Recon.
Because of this fact alone, we're probably never going to vote for Herschel Walker. This is a new era in politics. The, personal scandals don't really have that much of an impact. You look at how it didn't really impact Raphael Warnock back in 2020. It's probably not going to impact Herschel Walker in 2022. And this is true. So the polling averages within the margin of error with some objectively bad polls in there. A Warnock plus 12 that came out of nowhere from Survey USA.
Terrible poll.
Yeah, that's not exactly enough reason for me to say, oh, it's over for Walker in this state. I think this is going to be a very close race. I think besides that poll, besides the CBS poll without any undecideds, Warnock is down below 48 as an incumbent. This is really a race that Walker will, in my opinion, have the possibility to win. I think that it's going to come down to the wire. I do believe that Brian Kemp is going to win the state by probably over 5. And at that point, I believe that he will carry Herschel Walker to the finish line. Herschel Walker is somebody who has the celebrity factor going.
That's a fair point RAP makes. Brian Kemp is very popular right now in Georgia. He's going to win. He's going to beat Stacey Abrams. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Will it be enough? Will it be a victory enough to carry a weakened Walker over the line? It's just tough to say because both of these guys have so much baggage weighing them down. It's very, very tough to say. It's going to be a very interesting race.
Going for him. A lot of the personal scandals tend to bounce off more if you are of the celebrity status. You look at Donald Trump, he was accused of a lot of things that were false. It didn't really impact him a whole lot in 2016 or 2020 to the point where it's like, yeah, Herschel Walker, he's an outsider. He's somebody that's beloved as a football star in the state. I think this is going to bounce off of him. Relatively speaking, and a lot of the people that are turning on him initially supported his campaign, which again kind of gives a little skepticism to how serious the claims may have been if these people were supporting such an evil guy at the onset of the campaign. But either way, I believe that you look at Georgia, you just need to see a little bit of a bounce back in the Atlanta suburbs, and potentially midterm turnout among black voters dipping would arguably be enough. This was a razor-thin state. Trends are working against Republicans. However, it is a midterm year. Biden is still underwater by 10-plus points in the approval rating, probably by even more than that in the state of Georgia. I personally don't believe that Herschel Walker has too much to worry about, and thankfully, the NRSC and Rick Scott are still funding him. They're standing beside him, and that's good because all these people that are referenced in the Big Four, they either vote with Biden 100% of the time or close to that, or in Fetterman's case, they will vote for Biden 100% of the time. So
True.
that's it for the state of Georgia. I wanted to go west. We could talk about Arizona. What a debate that was last week. Blake Masters just going out there and really standing out against Mark Kelly, who sounded like a broken record, was attacking Blake Masters. Masters would debunk the attack, and then Mark Kelly would double down. He just came across as very uncharismatic.
No matter where your politics is, listen, if you're a hardcore Democrat, you watch that debate in Arizona, you picked Kelly as the winner. If you're a hardcore Republican, you picked Masters as the winner. And, independents, you probably went with what your bias and your leanings went to. But as somebody who coaches candidates on the art of debate, okay, I'm telling you right now, I'm just removing the politics. So this analysis that I'm saying right now, I'm removing the politics, just the art of debate, just the fundamentals of debating, from presentation to sourcing to counterpunching to staying on message, right? There's a thing that you can Google called a Leesburg grid. And basically it breaks out into 4 quadrants, right? What you're going to say about your opponent, what you're going to say about yourself, what your opponent is going to say about himself, and what your opponent is going to say about you. You want to keep the debate in the top 2 boxes. You want to keep the debate in the messaging of where you need to stay on your message, and you need to hit your opponent over and over again on the messaging that you want to hit them on. You do not want to get dragged into your opponent's messaging. And on that fundamental alone, Blake Masters was, and excuse the pun, he was masterful in that debate. He destroyed Kelly. He eviscerated him. Whether you like the guy or you hate the guy, either one of these guys, the fact of the matter is the stronger debater was Blake Masters, and it was a unanimous decision. If that were a UFC or a mixed martial art fight, the ref would have stopped it. Kelly got crushed across the board. That's just the facts, and I'm wondering how much it will play, because a lot of people don't tune into Senate debates. But I think if there is a state that would turn in, if there is a state where the true undecideds and the independents may change their vote based off a debate that they saw, especially one as dominated by Blake Masters, it could be Arizona. So I'm very interested in seeing polling that's going to come out next week and the week after to see if there's any post-debate bump for Masters, because he slaughtered Mark Kelly by any measure. Even our resident Democrat, Lauren, was squeamish during that debate. We watched it together, and man, I felt for her, because it was not a good performance from her team and her guy, and she loves Mark Kelly. So, even she admitted that Kelly lost the debate. So take that as some objective analysis.
He came across as somebody who just was that career politician, and I don't really think that's going to play out too well, because he really couldn't even run from the record. He just went out there, said Masters bad, and Masters countered that, and he hit Kelly pretty hard where it mattered, and that was absolutely huge for him in the state of Arizona. And this is a state that RCP has in the Republican column. They have Republicans at 52. I think at the end of the day, 53 is more than likely. I'm going to stick with it. But right now, Mark Kelly's up in the polls by 4.1. But at this point, back in the 2020 election, Mark Kelly was leading by a lot more than 4 against McSally, and he only ended up getting by a little bit less than 2.5 points.
True.
And the fact is that Kelly is still below 50% as an incumbent. That's never really a good thing. And he's performing far worse than he was in the 2020 election. And still, a lot of the polls in the mix, we know how they have underestimated Republicans in the past, whether it is Suffolk, whether it is Data for Progress, whether it is Marist. CNN has a poll in there as well. We're still about a month away from the election, and Masters tends to be surging. This guy was somebody who came up from behind in the primary and won roughly in the last couple of months or so. I think you're going to see a very similar thing happen right here this fall in the state of Arizona. And in terms of where the path to victory for Masters is on the map, it's pretty easy. He's going to have to run it up in the exurban areas, which I believe he will, especially with the border being a top issue. He definitely won the debate on the border issue hands down. You talk about a place like Yuma, a place that moved right in 2020. He's probably going to do better there. You talk about a place like Mojave County. You talk about where Prescott is up in Yavapai. These are the places that he's going to need to do well in, as well as trim the margins in places like Maricopa. He may win Maricopa at the end of the day. It's going to be very close.
If Blake Masters wins Maricopa County, it's over. It's over. Absolutely over. Democrats cannot win in the state of Arizona without Maricopa County, in my opinion. Not anymore. Not with the demographic shifts, the influx of people who have moved into the state over the last decade. Democrats have to hold on to Maricopa County. I would say if Maricopa County is within 2.5 to 1.5 points, even if it goes for Kelly, it's probably over for him. He's got to run it up. Maricopa County, he's got to run it up and have a similar shift or hold the shift from 16 to 20 if he's going to hold on to the state. The northern parts of the state, I think, are going to. We're seeing in our model and our fundamentals that the northern parts of Arizona are actually moving to the right now. And you can see here on the map that REP is showing us from the New York Times, the little blue arrows and then a significant kind of up by Flagstaff blue arrow to the left. We're willing to bet right now with 28 days to go that you're going to have little red arrows to the right in this election, and that is also dangerous for Kelly. He is going to have to run it up in Pima and Maricopa County in order to hold on to a seat, we believe.
Do well there, as well as Pima County. He might do better in Pima, especially as Republicans are doing a little bit better with Hispanics, and that's also his home county.
That's a fair
as well.
point. It's going to be,
and you look at Predicted and where Predicted stands.
Very fair point by REP. The Latino vote is a free agent right now in Arizona and many border states. We'll see what side of the fence they ultimately fall down on. But if he wins 38 to 42% of the Latino vote in Arizona, Kelly's done. Kelly's done. So there, in many ways, we see more pathways to victory for Masters. The pathway to holding the state for the Democrats and Kelly is much wider and probably easier to travel, but there's more routes to the destination. They may be more narrow, they may be tougher to achieve, but there is more routes to a victory for Masters, if that makes sense.
Right now, Blake Masters, over the past couple of weeks or so, he's surging. He was at 36, now he's up at 43. So you see a little bit of movement there in his favor, and that is really just because of the debate. We haven't seen any polls since then, but it's very possible that Blake Masters, the way that the poll trajectories have historically gone in the state of Arizona, he very well could be leading the polling aggregate by Election Day.
It's true.
But either way, that is going to still be a close race when it's all said and done. So we're going to go down to the state of Nevada. What does Nate Plastic have in Nevada? Oh, even Nate.
So before we get into Nevada, I do want to say, too, Arizona tends to be very forgiving to senators and statewide electors who have military experience. And I know a lot of the right-wing prognosticators like REP talk about how Senator Kelly being an astronaut and being a veteran isn't going to play anymore in that state, but I do believe it will still have an effect. And there is going to be some forgiveness factor there, even though I think it's going to be very difficult for Kelly to continue to sell himself as a moderate based just off his voting record. Voters understand a voting record, and yeah, Senator Kelly's just not a moderate Democrat. His counterpart could run on being a moderate or a maverick Democrat, Kristen Sinema, but he really he's towed the line for the establishment. So that's going to hurt him, but I also think there is going to be a little bit of forgiveness because of his military record, but it could be a wash because Arizona likes a maverick. Arizona likes, whether it's John McCain or Jeff Flake or Kristen Sinema, Arizona likes a senator who gives the finger to their own party and their own establishment from time to time. So whether you agree with that or not, they obviously, just look at the voting history. They love electing senators who give a finger to the establishment. So whether that's from the moderate side or whatever. My point is they like the maverick label, they like the maverick personality. Whether these people really were mavericks or not, we'll let you debate in the comment section below, but that is the perception, right? So it's going to be very interesting because Mark Kelly can't run as a maverick. He's a company guy. He toes the Democratic line, but Arizona loves its military vet and the astronaut thing. We'll have to just see how it plays out. I think Arizona is going to be very tight as well.
Plastic has Nevada as a pure toss-up, basically, which that's very good news for Adam Laxalt.
Very good news for him.
And you look at RCP right now, they have Laxalt up in the polls by 2.1%. He's winning in every single poll that comes out. And the only rebuttal to...
And this is what confuses us about 538. This is a great example. The fundamentals in Nevada right now are all on the Republican side, all of them, across the board, with the exception of abortion, but is not a top 3 issue in Nevada. It's not a top 3 issue in Nevada. Believe it or not, it's just not. And when you look at the polling, again, it's inflation, jobs, crime. These are the things, and water. Water is a top 3 issue in Nevada, understandably so, because the Great Basin is going through horrendous drought right now, and there's really no fix on the way. So how 538 doesn't have a projected victory, even if it was marginal for Laxalt here, you really have to question their methodology. You have to like what how hard is your thumb on the scale for the left? And if there's a glaring circumstantial case to be made that 538 has its thumb on the scale for the left in this election, it would be this race. Nothing about their model right now makes sense about Nevada.
Why Laxalt might not exactly win is because, Mosto's an incumbent, and polls in Nevada have actually underestimated Democrats. And Masto is an incumbent, but
marginally,
she can't even get above 46% in a single poll. Even a Democrat internal poll or a CNN poll, she cannot get above 46% to save her life. That is a little bit of a problem.
Big problem.
Terms of polls underestimating Democrats in the state of Nevada, they didn't in 2020. They did in 2018, but there wasn't a whole lot of polls that we saw come out. They did it in 2016, but there were very few polls, again, in the aggregate. Fact is, you have about 5 or 6 polls in the aggregate. Laxalt is winning every single one. He's got the funding. Democrats in their apparatus that would do a very good job at reaching voters and turning out voters is essentially gone. The whole leadership in the party was replaced earlier last year by the DSA individuals, which are far more incompetent, especially if the primary is any indication. And you talk about Clark County moving right. You only need to see a little bit of movement in Clark County. This is a county that voted for Obama over Romney by around 15 points. It voted for Biden by just 9 points. And if that's within 7, Republicans are probably winning the state of Nevada.
No question about it.
And with trends among white working class voters in recent years, with trends among Hispanic voters, I think you're probably going to see that. And even Nate Plastic knows it. He's not exactly going to put it in Laxalt's column now because that's not exactly the kind of guy that he is. But either way, we know very well that Republicans are favored in the state of Nevada, which would bring their total to 53 if they were able to win all 4 of these. But this is where the energy needs to be. Less, money and resources being put towards Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, or Wisconsin. There are some House races there that need to be funded. But in terms of the Senate candidates or the Senate races there, no. Tim Ryan's going to lose by around 10. Mandela Barnes is going to lose by around 7. So is Beasley. Rubio's probably going to win by close to double digits, if not over that. And Republicans are going to have a good year. But you got to understand, this all comes down to these 4 races. This is where it's determined. And Republicans appear to be in very good shape in all 4 of them. It's not over. We have almost a month to go. There's a lot of work left to do here. But either way here, in terms of controlling the Senate, you'd rather be in the Republicans' position right now than the Democrats. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below.
You can find all of Red Eagle Politics, the link to this video and the link to his page and his Twitter in the description below. Generally, I agree. Obviously, like I said, he's definitely a major voice for the populist conservative movement. So, obviously a voice on YouTube, a very successful voice on YouTube for the America First movement. So, you have to take it, he's giving his opinion here, right? So he's delivering opinion. He really kind of he's kind of the answer, right? The yin to the yang of let's talk election. That guy is a voice of, I haven't figured out if that young man's a progressive leftist or an establishment Democrat or somewhere in between, but clearly his bias leans to the left. REP clearly leans to the right. The reason why I have a little bit more respect for REP is he admits it. He doesn't lie about who he is or what's going on. Not that LTE does, but it seems to me that the LTE channel tries to come across as this objective, unbiased analysis channel about elections, and that's just not true. His bias just ekes out of every faucet over there. So my point is I generally agree. I think REP is a little more bullish on the Republican chances in these states than we are right now. Obviously, we have 51 seats projected. We think there's a high probability that there could be 52 Republican Senate seats at the end of the election. But Georgia is who knows at the moment. There's a lot of stuff that has to shake out there. Both guys are being weighed down by October surprise bombshells, if you will. So we'll have to see how that plays out. The Democrats have a high floor in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of Pennsylvania Democrats that, it doesn't matter the health condition or what's going on. They're only voting Democratic. They don't care who is there. Generic D is good for 47% of the vote in Pennsylvania every single year. And that's not true for Republicans. So Pennsylvania, who knows? I'm not sure that I am not bullish on Republicans' chances for the governorship of Pennsylvania right now. If I'm looking just objectively at the data, it looks bad. That being said, a lot of that data is being relied upon low confidence polling. So could there be a huge polling miss like there was in 2016? Obviously. But yeah, we're not big on Doug Mastriano's chances right now here at Election Recon. We could be wrong. That's why we're showing you REP. He could be right. We'll have to wait and see, but we think it's not likely Mr. Mastriano wins in Pennsylvania. In Arizona, what's holding in our model, what's holding Arizona back from flipping is the fact that Mitch McConnell, his PAC, and the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee pulled money out at the most critical time in that race, and just really poor chess, in my opinion. That was a big head scratcher for me at this time where it should have really been a wash, and they should have been competing for messaging. So that could be enough to come back and haunt him. We'll have to wait and see. The Republican leadership is coming back into Arizona, but it feels almost too little, too late. So we'll have to wait and see how the money plays there. In Nevada, we are growing in confidence every day that Nevada is going red. So you have to take it like this, okay? Republicans hold on to all their protects, right? Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Wisconsin, and hope that there's not some craziness in Missouri or Kansas, right? Then they only need to pick off 2 of the 4. So it's very, very close. And we would say here at Election Recon that it is more probable at this hour that Republicans reach 53 seats than Democrats do. We would say it's slightly more probable that Republicans have at least 51 than the Democrats having 51. But remember, the Democrats only need 50. They only need 50 to hold control of the chamber, and that is an advantage that is built into the statistics. So keep that with a grain of salt. This has been episode 3 of Reaction Monday. I'm Josh Whitfield. This is Election Recon. We hope you enjoyed this, the oasis of reality, doing a reaction and analysis to Red Eagle Politics, Senate Battleground analysis from yesterday, the Big 4. We hope you enjoyed it. We will see you next week.